Hi everyone, I'm Shaylin here with Reedsy. Today we're going to be talking about introducing characters. So we already did a part 1 on this topic back on Tuesday. Today we're going to be looking a little more specifically at specific situations. So if you want kind of some ground rules and general tips, you can check out our last video. This one will probably make more sense if you watch that one first. But today we're going to be covering specific techniques that you can use for introducing a main character, a side character, and a new character. So let's start with the main character. The main character is, of course, in most cases, the first character we're going to be introduced to in the story. Unless you have a prologue or something like that, the main character is the narrator of the story, so they're the first person we're going to meet. Because of that, your most powerful tool for introducing a main character is voice. Voice is an excellent tool for showing. It can definitely feel a little awkward and very telly if the main character starts telling the reader about their personality traits. You can show all of this through their narrative voice. If the character is funny, integrate humor and jokes and sarcasm into their narrative voice. If the character is kind of edgy, you might have a bit of an angrier, grittier narrative voice. Think about which details the character would realistically pick up on, as well as their tone. The character's tone is their view towards the story, and it'll probably be really heavily tied to their personality. So from the get-go, if you can introduce the character with a strong narrative voice, one that has a lot of personality, one that uses vivid details to show us what the character's personality is, we can learn so much about the character just from that first page. Although it might not seem like a ton to work with, narrative voice is such a powerful tool. We're basically getting this really intimate access to the main character's thoughts, and without the character even directly saying anything about themselves, we can learn so much just through that introduction. You also want to let them be active. This is pretty much a general rule, but it's especially key to talk about when referencing a main character. If a story's opening just shows the main character sitting around observing, that's not as strong as if we're introduced to the character doing something. How they feel about this task, whatever it is, can also show us a lot about them. If they're doing something they're really competent at, say you're writing a fun fantasy book and your main character is a bounty hunter, and we start with them actively chasing someone and then just taking that person down, and we show them being really competent in this, that can show us a lot about this character's skill set and their confidence in their skill set. Or you could start with the character doing something out of their element, something they're not very good at, something they don't really enjoy. Whatever situation it is you place your character in, starting with them in an active situation is usually going to show us a lot more about the character than if they're just thinking. All of that said, showing is really important, but there is a little bit of an exception to this show don't tell rule when it comes to main characters, and it's that sometimes you just have to say the information. A lot of writers can get really tripped up because they're really scared of exposition. They're scared of the dreaded info dump. They're scared of any exposition whatsoever. Sometimes there's information about a character that you simply just need to offer up. It takes one sentence, and it's more important for the reader to just get this clear understanding of what's going on than try to integrate it really subtly. Of course, you want to make it an interesting and well-written sentence, but 1 or 2 sentences of exposition that give us crucial details about the character that we need to know. Sometimes you just need that single sentence of exposition to give clarity to the story. 1 sentence of exposition that avoids confusion and clarity issues is better than having no exposition whatsoever. You don't have to be completely afraid of exposition, just write it well and use it sparingly. You also want to try to introduce their flaw as soon as possible. When it comes to the main character, their character flaw or character flaws are the most important of really any character flaw in the story. And the way to do this is to show their character flaw actively causing problems for them as early as possible. If your character's flaw is that they're really stubborn, show this impacting their life, maybe even before the inciting incident, before we even show it causing problems in the actual storyline, in their ability to achieve their goal in the end. Show it impacting them in their day-to-day life. We want to see potential for growth in a main character. That's a really important quality in a protagonist in almost every case. And so introducing their flaw, even if they're not really aware that it's a problem quite yet, and doing that through showing rather than telling is a really important aspect to introducing a main character. So now let's talk about side characters. This is for a character that the main character has an existing relationship, already knows. They're not a new character entering the main character's life, but you still need to introduce them to the story. The most most important thing here is to focus on the relationship between this character and the main character. Their introduction isn't just about introducing them as a person, what they're like, what they do, what their personality is, but also introducing the dynamic between these two people. Again, try to aim for an active beginning. This way we can see their dynamic play out through an interaction, through a scene, and this is a great form of showing. You also want to try to explore what the tension is in the relationship. Very rarely do you want to have a relationship that has no conflict whatsoever. If a relationship is going to play into the plot, you probably want there to be some tension involved. If you really want to think about it in kind of a storytelling theory way, that tension is probably going to come from the main character's flaw that we've already introduced, or from kind of a larger external problem in the character's lives that's going to play into the story maybe as a kind of subplot. You can actually often get away with a bit of exposition in this case. This is because the main character knows this person, they know a lot about them, and so often it's actually very natural for when this person enters the scene for the main character to be a little bit expository and say, this is my sister, her name is Sally, you know, she's a horse trainer, she's 3 years older than me. You still, of course, always want to make exposition interesting and well written, but this is a very natural place to include exposition, oftentimes without it feeling jarring. It actually often feels very natural, especially if you integrate it throughout their interaction. It can also be a powerful technique to include a very brief flashback here. I will leave our video on flashbacks for you to check out because the technique you probably want to use is the half scene. The half scene is when you're basically in the middle of a scene and then you kind of just jump backwards into a flashback, kind of subtly without a scene break, and the scene is usually only a paragraph or two long. Jumping into a little flashback can give us a lot of background on their characters and their relationship by showing us a very pivotal moment. It might be the moment they met, it might be a moment that really changed or defined the relationship, or it might be a recent thing that's currently causing tension. Say, you know, you're introducing the sister and her and the main character are currently in the middle of a big fight. Jumping back to that big argument that happened a week earlier and showing us a little bit of that can be a really powerful tool for introducing the character. And finally, we have a new character. So this is for a character that the main character doesn't know. In most cases, you're going to begin the introduction of a new character with a physical description. This is because it's all the main character knows about this person. When you first meet someone, really all you know about them is what they look like. However, a physical description can be a really powerful tool and you can make it work a lot harder than you might think. We talked about this in our first video, but use specific details to show us inferences about the character. So for example, what a character is wearing can actually show us a lot about their lifestyle or what they value. Someone who's dressed in like really high-end designer clothes, you know, looks really put together, gives us an insight into their lifestyle and how they feel they want to present themselves to others. Someone might be dressed in, say, their vocational uniform and we would understand what they do for work just based on what they're wearing. You also want to make sure that you're looking at them through the main character's initial impression of them. Remember, your main character has a distinct lens with which they observe new people and the entire world around them. And every single time you introduce a new character, it's not only an opportunity to learn about this character, but to also learn about the main character. What biases does your main character have that might affect how they perceive this person? You know, that really high-end, well-dressed character we talked about earlier. Well, maybe our main character is really humble, you know, doesn't really care about appearances, and from their perspective, they're gonna meet this person and think that they seem kind of vain, a little show-offy, even if the person's demeanor isn't necessarily like that. When you introduce a new character, you want to really play into your main character's perceptions of them. Either to set up what the dynamic going forward is going to be, you know, if there's some disdain there, if this is gonna build into a rivalry, or to potentially subvert it. You know, a lot of the time you especially see this with romantic storylines where the two characters have kind of a bad first impression of each other and then you end up subverting that later on when they actually get to know each other. You want to use your main character's assumptions about this person even if the assumptions aren't correct. And finally, you want to highlight something memorable about this person. Because this is a new character that we don't know much about, try to pick out something interesting about them so that they'll be memorable to kind of signify that this character is going to be important. We want to feel that this interaction that the main character has just had with this new character is important, that there's going to be something to build off of there. So that is how to introduce characters. So to summarize, when you're introducing the main character, your greatest tool is the character's voice. Show them doing something active, again, to show us who they are. But don't be afraid to give us crucial information when necessary to avoid clarity issues. For side character, you really want to rely on the relationship this character has with your narrator to introduce not only this character, but why their relationship is important. And finally, for a new character, try to use the main character's inferences and assumptions about this person, even if they end up being subverted later. That can actually be a really fun technique. Thank you so much for watching. Remember to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any new videos from us. We've got new writing, editing, and publishing videos every Tuesday and Friday. Until next time.